Coach Cuonzo Martin has been the definition of strength, leadership, and success over his course as a head coach at Missouri State, Tennessee, Cal, and now Missouri. I've enjoyed watching his journey so much so that I've included a couple of my favorite interview clips to start this interview here. I'm extremely blessed and honored to be able to share Coach Martin's story with you. It was a dream of mine when I started the Brantley Method that one day I would be able to interview Power 5 head coaches and men like Coach Cuonzo Martin. So this is a special moment for me, a special moment for the Brantley Method, and hopefully within this interview you find something that makes it a special moment for you as well. So without further ado, I provide you motivation, education, and inspiration from Coach Cuonzo Martin.
Are you willing to make the decision to succeed? That's the first question. Are you willing to make the decision to succeed? Everybody talk about it. We're about to find out. A couple of things I'll talk about, guys, just not necessarily basketball things, just life things, because the basketball part will take care of itself. We'll spend a lot of time doing that, guys. You have everything you need here to be a successful student athlete. There are no excuses. Be responsible and accountable to do your job. Responsible and accountable to do your job. And I know you guys probably heard this a lot. Do you have the courage to raise your expectations? Most people like to stay here or stay down because they're afraid of failure and disappointment. Everybody can handle increase. Everybody can handle increase. Anybody know what I'm about to say next? How many can handle decrease? When they do this, it's gonna be packed house November 10th. The ref say, they do that, it's gonna be 5 guys on the wood. And if it's tight, it's gonna be 5 guys on the wood. I will challenge you and I'll push you, but I'll never disrespect you. Last thing, gentlemen, because it's a beautiful day to be alive. Happy to have you guys on board.
You'll win games, you'll lose games, and sometimes losses bring me to my knees where I don't want to get out of bed, but at the end of the day, I have to do what I do for my family and for these guys to show them this is what a man looks like. And that's all that matters to me. Yeah, I want to win every game, but if I can give them something and pour into their lives and help them understand this is the truth, it might sting you a little bit, but this is the truth. But we can get to this point if we do these things. Because if you're not teaching them life lessons, what are you really teaching them? You're wasting their time. Eventually, they'll be somebody's father. They'll be somebody's husband. They'll run a company one day. So if they're not learning those lessons now, I didn't do a good job in teaching.
I'm excited, like I told you when we talked the other day. I'm so excited to talk to you. Just as I see it and as I've seen it and as I've watched your career, a strong leader of not only your team, but a leader within the industry, a leader within this fraternity of all coaches, but more specifically, black coaches, somebody that we can look up to, somebody that we can look at as an example of just strength, an example of consistency, an example of integrity. So, without a doubt, this is something I've been looking forward to all week since we talked last week, and excited to talk to you.
Oh, thank you, man. I'm looking forward to it, man. Just again, take your time. We're not in a rush. It's all good. I give you the same respect that I would give Barack Obama. So just take your time. We go from there.
Who is Cuonzo Martin? Who is the man beyond the coaching record, beyond the coaching tree, beyond the different stops within this journey that God's placed in your life? Who is that man?
It's a good. I just think for me, for whatever reason, though I'm 49 years old, I'm grateful to be 49. Somewhere it feels like I'm still that little guy from East St. Louis, man. It just God has gave me a torch to carry or to bear, whichever one you want to use. And my journey has been a bumpy road, and I say it in a great way. It's a beautiful thing for me, and just all the life lessons, the things that I've been through in my life. But more importantly, as I've grown, as I like to think, a man of character, a man of integrity, which for me, both of those words go hand in hand. A man with a tremendous amount of respect for just living life itself, and I don't take that for granted. a man that is grateful to have a family. God bless me with a family. My mom is still on this earth. My father's still on this earth. So I still have family members on this earth, but grateful to have a wife, 3 children, because that wasn't owed to me. And I appreciate the opportunity to be the man of the household, to be able to provide for my family. So all those things are a big deal to me. So again, just a man that's embracing every opportunity, but understand that there will be bumps in the road.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you alluded to being a man from East St. Louis. And, I really didn't understand what that meant until I played football at University of Illinois. And some of my teammates were from East St. Louis. And we would sit down and we would have talks. And, I'd say, oh, I'm from Detroit. And they say, oh, you're from Detroit. Oh, I'm from East St. Louis. And it didn't dawn on me until, later on in my life or during some of those conversations. But later on, you start to do research and you start to see kind of the socioeconomic background of certain places. And East St. Louis, in the 80s and 90s, when you were coming up, although it was a small city, it had some big city challenges. So talk to me a little bit about overcoming some of, they always say dream beyond your surroundings, right? So overcoming the external environment and all the things that were happening around you, and utilizing the lessons and the things you learned there. How has that influenced you as a man, as a father, as a coach? Talk to me about how those beginnings formulated who you are today.
Well, it's funny you use the word dream, because my mom used to always say dream big, and she would take us to these homes in St. Louis, because we never had a car, so we would always have to ride the bus. So she would take us to these home shows in St. Louis when we were younger, and outside of St. Louis, more Clayton, Ladue, certain areas, but I'll say St. Louis. And we would go to these home shows, and we'd lay in the bed like that was our home, and it was a great feeling just to be a part of it. And she would always say, dream big, don't give up, chase your dreams. And when you're that young, you don't really understand, and you dream like you're praying to God. So those are your dreams and good times and all that. So, and for me, it was never about dreaming to be a professional player and all that. It was just finding a way, if as I got older, making my mom's life better. But I think oftentimes when you're in those environments, and like I say to my wife jokingly but seriously, I want everybody to know, when God lays me to rest, that somewhere on that I'm from East St. Louis on my tombstone. I want people to know that. That means a lot to me. But you hear so many times, you hear the sayings, and often in those low socioeconomic communities, it's hard to attack and move forward when what's behind you has left you so depleted. And it's just like the next day is an obstacle within itself, because there's so many things. It's just, when you struggle to make ends meet, you're making sure your children stay out of harm's way. Because my mom had 2 boys and 2 girls, making sure they stay out of harm's way, staying away from this when you got young teenage daughters, beautiful daughters, and all of a sudden staying away from older guys. All this stuff goes on when as a parent, you're working a job early in the morning, you're working at night trying to make ends meet. And it just, that's what prayers, whether you believe in a God or think there's a God or not, that's where prayers come into play. And that's when Mom did a lot of praying at the time. And again, we prayed because we always prayed just to survive. And that was simply it, man. But again, my age and growing up in East St. Louis was the best place in the world. I only realized there were situations that were tough when I removed myself, when I got older and went to college, and out of college, and I said, man, something not right. So you really start to understand it then. But because East St. Louis is 100% black. Yeah. So, and that's all love. I mean, you might have a little bit more than others, but it's all family, it's all good, it's all a great stay and a great time. But when you get older, you get away from it, you realize we were at a disadvantage in a lot of ways, but it didn't stop the perseverance and the character and the growth of a community. Because again, that old saying, it takes a village to raise a family, that's what it simply was. When you living in those project housing, everybody raised your child. If you're down the street, you got in trouble, you're paying for it down the street, and you're paying for it when you get home. So and that's what it was. And again, but it was all family. It was nothing like it. And I would never take away or replace those moments in my life, because I think they're part of what made me who I am today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, they always say there's nothing like a praying mama, a praying grandma. There's nothing like that village mentality. And as much as I hated it growing up in Detroit, I hated knowing that whatever I did around the corner, you know, my mom was going to know about it before I got home. But, you know, I look back on it now, being a father, you know, that's one of the things that I miss the most is, you know, it feels like we don't have the same senses of community, the same senses of, you know, we weren't getting away with anything, right? And, you know, there wasn't, you know, nowadays it's almost as if, and I say it all the time when I'm coaching and dealing with young men, I tell, you know, I have coaches who will say to me, Justin, you know, it's hard to discipline, or it's hard to, you know, I had this conversation last year. I had a coach tell me, Justin, it's hard to, and I said, look, I said, to me, it's about the consistent discipline, because these young men are yearning for it because they're not getting it. And initially, yes, they're gonna, you know, initially they're gonna resist, right? But the thing that I always say is some of the ones that are in the need of the most love from us show us in the most unloving ways. And, you know, I think that that's one of the things in the inner city that's missing the most right now is that community. Like, you'd be hard pressed to show me a community where, you know, the grandma down the street can spank the young man because he's doing something wrong. It's just not happening in 2020, right? So that's a big difference. And it sounds like, you know, that experience gave you a different level of appreciation, a different level of understanding of who you are, but more importantly, whose you are, you know, who you belong to, and that, you know, you represent, you know, first and foremost, our Father, you know, but you represent your family, you represent your neighborhood, you represent your community. There's a lot of expectations that comes with that. And you went on, you had an amazing college career, leaving from East St. Louis. You know, I look at it, I've done lots of research. I looked at, you know, the success that you guys had on the floor. And from that, you know, from the success at Purdue and what you did there, you took that and you turned pro. Right? And I'm not glancing over the basketball success. I think that's, everybody knows that, right? That's something that's talked about a lot, but I wanted to get to a point that I've touched on with a lot of young men over the last couple days is eventually the air's coming out the ball. The game's going to end. For 99% of us, it's ending well before we're prepared for it to end, right? And a lot of times we don't have a parachute to catch us on that fall, right? Like it's coming quick, it's coming fast. We didn't pack a chute because we weren't prepared. For you were playing overseas, you were playing in Italy. The year is 1997. You came home and were diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. If you don't mind, talk to me a little bit about that battle, right? And essentially facing two battles, because you're finding out you have cancer, but you're also finding out that the game you love, that you've been playing forever, now is the least important thing for you to be concerned with. And then secondly, you know, winning that battle and what that has done for your life, your career, just your entire well-being.
Well, when I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a form of cancer, and you know, you're talking about 20 plus years, and now I'm able to say the word cancer comfortably. You know, I've always struggled with saying the word, but you know, I was playing professional basketball in Avellino, Italy, and long story short, and how we kind of found out we had a practice. I was sprinting up and down the court from the baseline, and I was breathing like this, and I just passed out at half court. And they took me back into the training room, and they did. The trainer, he couldn't speak in English, but what he was trying to say, used to be big, but now you're small. And so throughout the rest of that day, I went to the hospital, maybe spent a couple hours in the hospital, tests, x-rays, blood work, and all that. And later that night, the owner of the team, whose wife she was Italian, but she was from New York, so she could speak fluent English. So she was just translating for him, saying, you need to get back to the States immediately. And my wife had been over maybe about 3 weeks to a month, and my son Joshua was 4 months old at the time. So we flew back to the States from from Rome, New York to Indianapolis. And we get back to Indianapolis. We get into our house, and I have my son Joshua and walk through the house, and I just kind of dropped him on the couch. I didn't drop him aggressively, but I had enough strength to drop him on the couch. And my wife was kind of getting in the bags, and then my wife came out of the room, and I was just leaning on the couch and just said, "We need to get to the hospital right away." And again, it's been so many years, so the timeline is anywhere between 1:30 and all of this happening to 3:30 in the morning. So we go to the hospital, and they did again tests, X-rays, and blood work. And what they found a tumor about the size of a baseball between my chest and lung area. And I don't remember the doctor's face that was on call that night, but I do remember vividly him saying, "I don't know if you're going to die, but this is life-threatening." And as I was sitting in the chair, and he was standing in front of me, and my wife and my son Joshua was sitting in a chair right across from me, and I glanced at my wife real quick, and I looked away, because I knew if I'd had contact with her for more than 3 or 4 seconds, I would have broke down. Again, not afraid to break down, but I wanted to be strong for some reason for her. And that night, they were hopeful. The next day or two, they were hopeful that it was tuberculosis. So they put me in a room with my family. It was really my son and my wife. They couldn't be in a room with me because they were hopeful that it was tuberculosis. And after tests and X-rays, they found out it was cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And really at that point, I could care less about the game of basketball, because in the process, because I had 4 knee surgeries, 2 of them before I even stepped on the college campus, I always prayed to God, when the game is over for me, let it be over. I wanted to be done. I never want to pick up a ball again. So I was okay with that part. The tough part was wanting to be on this earth because, again, newly married, about 2 years in marriage, and then my son, Josh, was 4 months old. So my prayers were simple to God outside of a lot of other things. For the most part, I just said, "God, allow me to see Joshua turn 18. That was my prayer, and I prayed to him like he's my father. So I don't necessarily say God, I mean, that's his name, but I prayed to him like he's my father, just to see Joshua turn 18, and whatever happens after that happens. And I didn't say that like some tough guy. I was saying it just, you gave him to me. You blessed me to have him. Then at least let me do that, because again, on the flip side of this, and I was thinking in terms of this too, in so many years, that here is a young Black kid. And again, my wife was a beautiful person, so she would have found somebody else. I mean, I understand that, whether I like that or not, but it just, I needed him to, if there was another man, to show him the way of what it looks like to be a man as he continued to grow as a young Black kid, and he grew in this space in life, show what it looks like. And so my prayers were just to help him through that, and just a legacy. Not that I use the word legacy all the time, but just to show him what it looked like, because he had my bloodlines, and I like to use that word a lot because it means a lot to me. And that was it, just to see him turn 18. He's 23 years old right now, so I'm ahead of the game as far as life is concerned. And not to say I'm ready to go, but it just, in the midst of all that, my wife and I, we talk about it. Dr. Andy Greenspan did a great job, and one thing he asked my wife and I in the process, he said, I think at the time, chances of survival at that time were probably 60+%, which wasn't bad. But he said, would you guys like to, and I don't want to be graphic on here, if kids are watching, would you like to store sperm, just in case after chemotherapy, we can't have kids again, but we'd have the sperm to induce with the eggs. Forgive me for my terms and all that, but and I just kind of looked at my wife, and in my mind I just said no, because if I'm not on this earth, I don't want to put that on her to have to do. I just said no, but by the grace of God, we ended up having 2 more kids. I have a son that's 18, I have a daughter that's 13. So it's been a blessing, man. But it was going through chemotherapy for about 4.5 months was a real fight, because it was the first time in my life I had no control over the situation. It was just simply to Dr. Greenspan, whatever medicines you think it or whatever it is, that's fine, because it didn't matter to me what the name of the medicine was, because again, if I'm not on this earth, it doesn't matter anyway. Do what you have to do to make it work. And that was it for me. Just my life was in your hands.
Right. So it sounds like, again, your upbringing and your being rooted in faith allowed you to, number one, be able to pray your way through that situation and be able to communicate with God and ask for what you were looking for, and ask, and it wasn't a selfish prayer, right? It was, oh, I want to raise and uplift this young man and make sure that, he has the proper upbringing. He has the proper guidance and leadership. And that aligns with, the mission, the calling of being a coach. So when you got through chemotherapy, the cancer went into remission. At what point did you know the next phase was coaching, or the next journey for you was going to be the coaching side? Because you said, hey, when it's over with, I don't want to pick up another ball, right? And for a lot of us, it's even more difficult being around the game but not being able to impact it physically. So talk to me a little bit about understanding, okay, coaching is my calling, and making that step.
It came down to, Coach Katie, who was my college coach, was a wonderful man. He called me and he said he had an opportunity for me to be on his staff, but it would be a year later. And I had to go back and finish school, because when I was in college, I never went to summer school, because I always worked a job because I felt like I could make more money working and send money home as opposed to going to summer school. So I never went to summer school at all. I tried it my freshman year. After a week or so, I dropped the class. I had to be on the move, trying to work, again, just to continue to help provide for the family at home. So when Coach Katie called me with the opportunity, I just felt like it was a tremendous one, but it was never a goal of mine to be in the coaching. Coach, and I say this respectfully, Coach says it all the time, that I was probably the best leader he ever had in his career of coaching. And whatever that means, you can ask in detail what it means from him. But just, I felt like I was a guy that took a tremendous amount of pride in team, family, valuing if you had a best player. Because I always said I was a great role player. I never felt like I was a star player. I felt like I was a great role player. And I didn't care who got the accolades, the stats. All I cared about was winning and being successful in the locker room. Even at halftime, that's a game to me. The game is, if we're in a half, we're down, that's a problem. Let's correct this. And all that meant something to me, because it was my life, and I poured into it. And so when Coach called me with that opportunity, I talked with my wife, and I just felt like that was it. So I went back to finish school, and I got on Coach's staff. And I can safely say it took me about 3 years to understand what it meant to be a college coach. And it's not a cakewalk. It's not as if you can recruit a top player and say, okay, I played the game before, this and that. That doesn't matter. I didn't understand early in the process, there's so many underlying factors and stuff that goes on behind the scenes. It doesn't matter how hard you work. Sometimes things just don't work out. So just really learning, building relationships and recruiting. And I'm grateful that I never talked about me as a player trying to get a recruit. I try to work myself and build relationships, genuine relationships, whether you like to hear what I said or not. And I wasn't a good storyteller, a guy that just can tell fibs just to get a prospect. That was never my nature. I try to be honest and transparent, but also, be real and raw, but have fun in the process. But I never want a young man or his family to come back and say, well, you said this, said that, just to get him. That wasn't good to me, because when I started recruiting, I always felt like when I was that kid and what was said to my mom, and I'll never forget Coach Katie, and my mom, and we talk to this day. My mom's a beautiful woman, but sometimes she was afraid to ask questions because she felt like it was a dumb question. Like, for example, you go on and say, okay, as a coach, you're talking, you say our AD. What is AD? I mean, so most people don't know it's athletic director or a syllabus. No, not many people know that. So you always want to speak to the level, not that you teaching down to the class, but speak to the level and be respectful when you're speaking to people if they don't understand certain things. Not that you're better than them. So I'm always conscious of that. I want to be able to listen, but also want to be clear in what I'm saying. You don't need to be the most eloquent speaker to get your point across. You got to have compassion for people. So just saw stories that my mom said, even my sisters in the process of sitting in a room and hearing coaches talk years ago, stuff that they talk about to this day. It means a lot to me, because you can't take small things for granted. And you can't undermine or underestimate a person because of their education or lack thereof. You assume certain things about them. There's still people that have hearts, they have compassion, they have faith, they believe in certain things. You treat them with the same level of respect. So I don't take those things for granted at all. But it's just, I'm grateful to be in this seat. It's not an easy seat, because you're dealing with so many moving parts, so many different young minds, not only the 13 players, scholarship players, but your walk-on players, as well as their families. There's so much that goes into that, and trying to make it become one, but still be real, raw, and authentic.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you talked about a couple things there that stood out to me. But one of the things, the last thing you said, you talked about being in that seat, and it's not an easy seat to be in. But you have found success in that seat, even though at times the color of that seat's changed a couple times, right? So your 12 seasons as a head coach, you've been at 4 different schools and 4 different conferences, and you have winning records at each of those. So how have you been able to build that culture that translates and transfers regardless of what seat it is, regardless of what city that seat is set in, and regardless of the yearly roster changes, the recruits, whatever the case may be? How have you been able to consistently have that success over that 12 seasons as a head coach?
What I've tried to do and understanding, out of a tremendous amount of respect for my staff and the people that are around me, including my players, I understand that shared power is the best power. We're better if we share the power. I've never been a guy that moves in such where people say, "Oh, that's the head coach because of how I'm moving." You demand respect by your character, your accountability, all those things. But I've never tried to be a guy that walk with my chest sticking out, because as I continue to amass success, surface success, so to speak, I pray for more humility. I continue to pray for more humility as you climb the ladder. I pray for more of that, because I don't want to lose sight of that, because I know why I'm sitting here. I know though somebody hired me, I know who put me in this seat, and I don't take that for granted. And I truly believe there's a God, so I don't lose sight of that part. But it's my commitment and understanding that there will be a tremendous amount of bumps in the road as you navigate, especially when you operate with integrity in our profession.
Yep.
You can't lose your fight, your tenacity, and your grit to do the right things, because your character will be compromised. And I say it to our players all the time. I've said it to my sons growing up. Your character is tested when it comes to drugs and alcohol, power, sex, and money. Because everybody has character until it is tested. Then it's revealed. So again, my character's been tested through this test of time, and I continue to stay strong.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you alluded to it earlier. You alluded to Coach Katie, giving you that opportunity, but also kind of, challenging you to take a path that wasn't one in which you originally set out, hey, I want to be a coach. And Coach Katie has a track record of not only success on the floor, success within his own programs. His coaching tree has been fruitful. You have yourself, Bruce Weber, Steve Lavin, Kevin Stallings, Matt Painter, Link Darner. Tell me a little bit about the impact that Coach Katie's had on your life and your career, and what is so special about Coach Katie that the men leaving from him are such strong leaders, and they've gone on to be as successful as they have been.
There's a lot of things. Of course, Coach was a great coach, so that part is understood. So I don't necessarily have to talk about the ball part. He was a great teacher and a great coach. 2 things that Coach said to me in a nutshell in the recruiting process, and it said to me in my home, my mom was there. If he goes to class every day, he'll get a degree. If he work hard, he will play. He didn't say if he work hard, he will start. He said if he work hard, he will play. And Coach stood true to that, even with guys that were walk-ons. If you worked extremely hard as a walk-on, Coach found a way to play you. Now, again, some would say, man, that's not a very good sales pitch, But for me, coming from East St. Louis, in my environment, between my high school coach, my elementary and middle school coaches, and the men that helped raise me, that was music to my ears, because that was toughness, that was grit, and that was an opportunity. And we never grew up with somebody promised you and a lot of pats on the backs and a lot of favors. It was hard work. It was a hard grind. So that part was understood. So now everybody around me said, yeah, that's a good place to go to, because, again, you have to earn it. You have to work for it. So listen to what Coach is saying. And I'll never forget, man, I struggled as a freshman, especially those first, 12 to 15 preseason games. And I had buddies, oh, man, you're not playing, all that stuff. They would laugh and joke about it, but it was never talks, you need to transfer. That was never even the conversation. Then the final straw for me, where it turned around, we were playing at Illinois, which a lot of people thought that's why we were going to school out of high school. We were playing there. And I played 45 seconds. This was my freshman year. I played either 45 seconds or a minute and 15, somewhere around there in the whole game. And that was a tough thing to deal with. And after that game, my mom, she had those Hallmark cards, and she gave Coach Katie one. She gave the assistant coach one. She gave those guys hugs as an assistant. Then when it came to me, she just, gave me a hug and a kiss, and she just said, are you reading your Bible? And I don't think I was reading at the level she wanted me to read at, but I mean, I think I said yes. And but again, what that said to me at that age, no excuses. We got to keep fighting, because again, she did her part. My son is in somebody's college. You'll take out a ballpark. You'll get that. You're in somebody's college. Make sure you don't lose sight of these things, getting your degree, being successful, and all those things. But the ballpark, you'll take care of that. You got that. And it was simply fight. So after that, say that game was Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, I can't remember. So that next week or so, I went into Coach Katie's office and just said, Coach, how do I get on the floor and play? And the crazy thing about it, the reasons he gave me to get on the floor and play, he was saying it from day one. I just wasn't listening. I had in my mind how I thought the game should be played. And that's what happened with a lot of young guys. They have in their mind, this is my game, this is my style and all that, so this is how I play. But once I embraced and absorbed what he said, I got in the starting lineup, and I never looked back until I left the school, because I understood what he wanted as a coach. I think too many times young guys go into a program and they want the program to fit what they're doing. And it's a trade-off, because you recruit a young man, you want to work for him. But what I try to tell a lot of young guys early, it's going to be hard for you, not because you lack talent, because it's different, because it's new. Even that walk-on is just as strong as you are as a freshman. There's an adjustment period. And once you make that adjustment and understand and listen and hear, you'll be okay. But I think so many of our young men struggle because they've had so many pats on the back, and it's hard to understand what's real and what's love and what's authentic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you and I spoke about that a little bit, with dealing with, at the level that you're at, you're recruiting players that a lot of them have never been told they're wrong, right? A lot of them have been told what they want to hear, not what they need to hear. And, that's why it's important to find the right fit and find the right player to fit your system, and the right player to fit your coaching and your culture. And obviously that's a big piece of, like I said, between you, Coach Mann, that culture of authenticity and that culture of communication and that culture of, hey, I'm going to tell you, you might not like what I have to say, but I'm going to tell you the truth. And I'm going to tell you, what you need to know, not what you want to know. And I think that that's important for young men, but especially important for young black men to understand that, we're doing them a disservice if we're giving them outs along the way, or we're telling them to transfer, or we're telling them, all the great things that they want to hear versus all the things they need to hear. So it's great to hear that you had those kind of influences and those kind of people around you, starting with your mother, but then leading on to Coach Katie as you were playing for him. Talk to me a little bit about the influences that you had, as a coach that kind of were able to give you that. And I've referenced that by saying this, I've looked at for the last 2 years, and actually I'll go back another. In the last 3 years, when I first stepped foot at Spire, I started to do research on guys that came before me, and as a director, it was a little bit different, but I looked at the great coaches, because ultimately that's, we're not only are we coaching players in the administrative role, we're coaching coaches, right? And we've got to make sure that all the pieces align and come back to where they belong at. And I saw guys like Kevin Sutton, who had done a phenomenal job at when he was at Mount Verde, right? I did research on Coach John Thompson, Coach Chaney, George Raveling, Tubby Smith and Nolan Richardson, Clarence Gaines and Wade Houston, guys that you don't hear enough about, right? Like guys that people don't really talk too much about. Clarence Gaines, they don't know what Clarence did and what he accomplished, and it's even more valuable when you think about the time that him and Wade Houston accomplished the things that they accomplished. So I did that research and found so much joy in taking pride in the details and being the very best version of myself. So for you, how important was the legacies of strong black men that sat in seats like yours at their universities? How important was that for your journey and the advancement of you?
is so huge because those are guys that, with the few TV channels that we had growing up, those are guys that we followed. And even you said Wade Houston. I had an opportunity to coach at Tennessee where he coached, and he obviously, one of his sons was the best college players ever, Allen Houston, to play in the SEC, but also a wonderful person. I had a chance to sit down with Wade Houston, a wonderful man, a very successful businessman, coached in a tough environment there, and he grew up in that area. I'll read you some, and I'll continue to talk about that. The Lord is my light and salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Whom shall I be afraid? That's Psalms 27:1. When I go back and I study our history as Black men and women, people, and just some of the things, and I don't need to go back to the 1600s, 17, 18, just even in Martin Luther King, and I've said this story before, when he was in that Montgomery bus boycott, coming from Atlanta, and just his house was bombed, and his daughter was 4 months old, if I'm not mistaken, his first child, she was 4 months old. And he ended up having 3 other kids after her. He could have gave up in the fight after that first bombing. He stayed the course till his last speech in Memphis, Tennessee. The things that Malcolm X went through, he stayed true to the ministry till the end. He was committed to it. So who am I not to respect the guys that came before me, to work as hard as I can work, and not just get consumed with just winning games or looking flashy with a nice suit, you got a nice car and all those things. What does that really mean? You had guys that came before you, because if I'm not helping the guys that coming behind me, then who am I? I mean, just my commitment to the guys behind me, I got to work exhausting hours, but I don't need to talk about it. I don't need to look like, I just need to do it so they can have opportunities to be successful. And I also have to fight the fight that some unwilling to fight. I have to be strong and stand in it. And though my knees may buckle, I have to stay strong and continue to fight the fight. I mean, can you imagine? I just think about, two of the most powerful men in the world to ever walk the earth, between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Can you imagine knowing your days are numbered? Just to feel it in your soul and continue to get up and keep going? Yeah. I'm not that strong yet. And I love the Lord. I'm not that strong yet, but that is a powerful, powerful place to be and to continue to push forward. So for me, for every young Black coach that's behind me, I have to do everything in my power to stand strong, to have a tremendous amount of integrity, character, respect, humility, but also muscle. Because we can't lose sight of, just because I'm humble doesn't mean I'm soft. Now, let's not get it twisted. Yeah. So I want to be clear of that. And just to never give up, because so many powerful people came before us, and they had to knock down a lot of bullets. Yeah. They went to work with boxing gloves on. Yeah. I have to stay true, and I have to be strong. And again, though my knees may get weak here and there, I got to stay committed, and I got to keep walking with perseverance and strength.
You hit the nail right on the head, right? Those that came before us, they walked so that we can run. And here you are setting the table for that next generation. So, when you look around the country and you see that in our profession, there's a fraction of us sharing that top seat. What are some things that we can do? And when I say we, I mean a collective we, from whether it be educating our youth at an early age that the opportunities exist, and preparing them to step in to the university, taking summer school, or talking to them about coaching development and things like that early on in their careers. What are some things that we can do to change the landscape so that opportunities, they're not necessarily, we don't, we're not looking at it like the Rooney Rule in the NFL, where, guys are getting interviews just because it looks good, or they're getting interviews just because it's mandated. But how can we continue to, and I think there's an amazing talent pool now. There's some amazing assistant coaches. I talk to Coach Anthony Solomon on the regular, and I think that he's one of the most brilliant minds, not only as a coach, but just understanding interpersonal communication and skills, and understanding how to be a leader and how to be a strong man. But not to downplay the talent pool that exists, but how can we raise the bar within the talent pool, whether it be education at an early level on the X's and O's, or building game plans? What is it that's needed more so that nobody else can sit there and say, oh, he's just a recruiter, or the sum of his worth is his ability to go get players? How can we shift that narrative?
Well, we've already shifted that. It's just the thing that we can't do. We can't believe that from the standpoint he got to improve his X's and O's. Or how have you hired any assistant coach to become a head coach? How did you know he knew X's and O's?
Right.
Well, you hired him based off the program. So I've never believed that part. I think what we have to do is you have just as many black qualified coaches as you do white. And I hate using those words like that, but you have just as many qualified. The key is the people that are in the hiring positions. Until black men and women get in position to hire someone, you won't really see change. That's the biggest key. It's not that guys aren't qualified to do the job. Yeah, they can do the job, but I need someone to hire me. And with that being said, that doesn't mean every person that's not black is racist. That doesn't mean that. In most cases, they hire who they're comfortable with. That's what that means. So now, what I try to explain to a lot of different people, if you want to get into coaching, so if you got a staff, you got players on your roster, and let's say 2 of them will be pros, or 11 won't. Well, how about pushing 3 of those guys in administrative roles? And then you look up 20 years later, the hiring practices will have changed because of people of color in position to do hiring. And you like to think when people of color in position to hire, they'll hire a qualified person regardless of how they look. It could be male or female, they're qualified.
Yeah.
I think that's what we lose sight of. We have all these boxes when somebody's trying to apply for a job. It should just say qualified, yes or no. It shouldn't say male, female, what color you are. Are you qualified for the job? So I think that is the biggest key. We have to be in positions to make decisions. So now with that being said, when you're talking about from an administrative standpoint, when you look around the college campuses all around the country, how many positions black men and women are in position on administrative roles, whether they're athletic director or in those positions? Look around the country. How many are in positions where they're the curators or on the committees to make decisions? How many black men and women are in position to be deans of students? How many black men and women are chancellors and presidents? That's it. Until we get in positions to make decisions, we will still be where we are, no matter how hard you work. So lose that thought of working hard and next, take that out. We've been tricked with that. Don't buy that. Don't buy that. When you label me as a recruiter, I'm okay with that if I'm able to get the job and get in the door. It doesn't matter what you label me. I got to do the job. Now, if you label me that and I become that and I don't study my craft, then that's on me. Yeah. You still got to study your craft. That's your skill level. And I think those are the things that we have to understand. Yeah, you can watch, man, there's so many, you can watch games, YouTube, you can pick anything up on YouTube. So I don't believe in that X and O's part. Now, again, you have some guys that are exceptional defensive-minded guys, offensive-minded guys, but that's all walks of life. That's not a color. Right. But it's just you making the commitment to do and be whatever it is you want to be. And I think that is the most important thing. But again, I go back to the fact that until we're in positions to make decisions, it'll continue to be a bumpy road.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that what you just said is so profound. When we have those guys that have a passion for the game and a passion for sports, but they're not that future, professional, it doesn't matter what sport, whether it be football, basketball, baseball, etc., and encouraging them to take a path that a lot just aren't talking about, right? Or a lot aren't, preparing themselves for that path. They may be looking at it as a second thought or an afterthought or an afterthought. That they'll get into coaching, right? But you don't hear too many guys say, hey, when this is over, I want to get into administration. So being able to start that conversation, I think that that's key. I think that that's huge. I want to touch on something. I want to close with something that you started earlier. You say you don't use the word legacy often, right? But you understand that you in that seat you hold a great responsibility. A great responsibility to that next generation, and you hold a great responsibility to those that follow behind you. Talk to me a little bit about the legacy that you're building and you're looking to leave when it's all said and done. When you're done coaching, when you step out of that seat for the last time, how do you want to be remembered? How do you want people to speak about Coach Cuonzo Martin and his existence, his life, and his leadership?
I'll read this to you, and then I'll answer that as best I can. Sometimes when you get to a destination of what God promised you, it doesn't feel like a celebration because of what it costs to get there. Man, it's just this is what I call a street fight, until the end. And I just continue to pray to God to give me the strength to be strong, because doing so many things, trying to help so many people with humility. And I just want to be, for me, if I can be the best father, first, the best husband, the best father, the best, and I say this respectfully, preacher and teacher and educator I can be, I think I've done my job. I've never been a guy to walk around boasting, bragging about those sorts of things, because I also know that all this can be taken away from me. I know that. I understand it, but I also know there's a war. I'm fighting for eternal living. And what I pray for, not so much as me, because for years, I always prayed for years, until maybe about 12 years ago, the same prayers I grew up hearing my mom praying. We want to pray to get food on the table, pray to, pay our rent, all those things. We always prayed that. So about 12, 13 years ago, I just prayed to God. I said, I'm tired of running. Give me whatever that toughest assignment is. Give me that toughest assignment. And then in that, I said, if that assignment is a tough one, give me the strength. If I get knocked down, give me the strength to get up and walk away. Or if it's your will and I never get up, that means I'm no longer on this earth, then please provide for the family that you gave me. And that's a hard one for me, because again, I like to grow old. And I say this simply, as a Black man, I want the pleasure of growing old. And I think what our society has to understand, with all this killing going on in our society, the world, but especially America, when they look at a Black man, when they see him, they should say, that Black man wants the pleasure of growing old. That is a beautiful, those 10, 11 words I just said can change lives and can change families, can change legacies and create wealth. If you allow me just to grow old, that's all I'm asking.
Amen. Amen. I tell you, I'm blessed and honored to be able to share this moment with you. I've learned so much. I feel like, without a doubt, I'm walking away from this better than I was coming in. And that means so much to me. And it means that now I have a little bit more to pour into others. So, I appreciate you. I know that, as people watch this, they're going to learn. They're going to learn about you. They're going to learn about themselves. They're going to learn about what their journey is going to look like moving forward, and be equipped with a little bit more to manage that journey and handle that journey. So without a doubt, I appreciate you, more than you know. I appreciate your time. I'm excited. I'm excited to be able to share this with people. And, like I said, I've been a fan, and now I'm even more of a fan. So you already know, anything you need from me, I'm right here.
Thank you, Jess. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you. All right, we'll talk soon.